Mental strength is paramount in MMA, with the ability to overcome setbacks, separating good fighters from the greats. So you can imagine the strength needed to overcome a loss out the gate. We've already looked at some big names who fell early in their career, and through perseverance and running out of ideas, we're back for another look. Welcome to INC, and these are 5 more MMA legends who lost their debut. Amanda Nunez was the toast of the MMA world after her win over Chris Cyborg at UFC 232, an achievement few would have predicted after her first pro fight in 2008. Nunez's combat career started at 16 when she started training in boxing, before she was invited by her sister to attend a local dojo specializing in jiu-jitsu. By the time she was 19, Nunez combined the 2 disciplines into full MMA training, and after 6 months made her pro debut against Anna India Maria at Prime MMA 2. In a match that drew considerable local interest, Nunez dropped India with a straight before her one-on-one opponent pulled guard, quickly locking in an armbar and forcing Nunez to submit 35 seconds into the first round. While Nunez has never spoken about the loss, she admits mistakes in her career helped shape her approach to fighting, one that saw her become the first female to win UFC titles in 2 weight classes. Since her debut, Nunez would lose 3 more times to Sarah Delalio, Alexis Davis and Kat Zingano.
And it's all over! That's it! Kat Zingano wins her UFC return!
Rafael dos Anjos was trademarked for his ability to overcome adversity, so it's appropriate his MMA career would start on a sour note. After a self-confessed troubled childhood, Dos Anjos took his first jiu-jitsu class at the age of 9, training under legendary coach Aldo Januario, where he'd win the Rio State Championship. By 2004, Dos Anjos was a junior national champion, working towards his first black belt, when he made his first venture to MMA against fellow newcomer Adriano Abu. The fight wasn't what you'd call technical, with both men swinging wildly from the start, with Dos Anjos scoring the rare quality moments with a succession of takedowns throughout. Despite Dos Anjos' efforts, the judges were swayed by Abu's striking and forward pressure, giving the hometown fighter a controversial split decision. Dos Anjos would also lose his 4th fight and later go 4-4 with the UFC before a career turnaround saw him become one of the division's most rounded fighters and culminating in a lightweight title win at UFC 185. Abu, meanwhile, would fight once more before returning to his day job as an intervention officer and later making headlines in 2014 when he used his MMA training to circumvent a prison riot. A rematch with Dos Anjos has yet to take place. At Jungle Fight 1 in 2003, all eyes were on Brazilian fighter Jorge Pitino. The shootbox legend was one of the country's most successful fighters, once holding a 16-fight winning streak and challenging Pat Miletich for the UFC welterweight title, with most seeing his main event as little more than a squash match. His opponent was 23-year-old Jacare Souza, a multi-time jiu-jitsu champion and fresh off his starring role in the musical version of The Lion King. Jacare started the fight strong, denying Pitino's early takedowns before rocking the UFC veteran on multiple occasions in the first. Despite this, Jacare's discomfort in the stand-up was evident throughout, and ultimately proved his undoing 3 minutes into the fight.
Et la droite de Jacare, décidément un combat de poing là-haut.
Oh, elle est passée la droite.
Oh, quelle droite! Un large crochet.
Ouais, c'est ce que je disais, quand ça passe, ça fait très mal.
While Pitino saw his career out in regionals, Jacare became an MMA staple, claiming wins over Robbie Lawler, Chris Weidman and Gegard Mousasi, and winning the Strikeforce middleweight title in 2010. Jacare currently holds a 22-7 record and is considered one of the greatest submission experts in the sport's history. Mark Hunt was never one to shy away from a challenge, a trait demonstrated from his first MMA match in 2004. Hunt was already a combat veteran by the time he made his debut, spending the past 4 years in K1 kickboxing, where he won the 2001 World Grand Prix as a sizable underdog. At Pride Critical Countdown, Hunt made his debut against Olympic gold medalist Hidehiko Yoshida, who entered the fight off a controversial draw with MMA legend Royce Gracie. Yoshida looked to exploit Hunt's ground game with a series of early submissions, only for the Kiwi to withstand the holds and show a surprising level of grappling acumen. Hunt enjoyed his best spell shortly after, landing several heavy blows as Yoshida continued to push for the finish, and entering the 7th minute, the judoka's perseverance finally paid off.
Now he's going right armbar, it's over! Hidehiko Yoshida armbars Mark Hunt!
Despite coming up short, Hunt's performance saw him earmarked as a potential star, a statement justified thanks to his aggressive style and epic fights with Bigfoot and Vanderlei Silva. After spells with Pride and the UFC, Hunt appears to have called time on his career, but not before confirming his place as one of the sport's toughest and most beloved fighters. MMA pioneer Carlos Newton had one of the most impressive debut losses. By the time he made his debut, Newton was considered one of the world's elite jiu-jitsu fighters, competing at events in Canada and Abu Dhabi, including a series of matches with the legendary Gracie family. In 1996, the 19-year-old Newton made his debut against Jean Rivière at Extreme Fighting 2. Rivière was a former karate champion with a 100-pound weight advantage, and after winning his debut in 19 seconds, was expected to make easy work of Newton. Newton gave one of the most spirited performances of his career, taking Rivière's back on multiple occasions and even landing in full mount after an early takedown. Rivière's weight advantage, however, would ultimately prove too much, with Newton submitting to exhaustion 7 minutes into the contest. Newton would become a staple of early MMA, enjoying spells in Pride and the UFC, where he'd face some of the sport's all-time legends, including Anderson Silva, Dan Henderson and Kazushi Sakuraba, before securing the biggest win of his career when he submitted Pat Miletich for the UFC welterweight title. Newton retired from MMA in 2010 and today works as an architect in his native Ontario. And now time for a few honourable mentions. The welterweight division's seen a number of contenders falter, with John Fitch, Dan Hardy and Thiago Alves coming short in their first outings. Glover Teixeira lost his first match to Eric Schwartz at WEC 3 before becoming one of light heavyweight's most feared fighters. Cub Swanson entered MMA with a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That came in handy. This is the INC, and thank you for watching.